The following is brought to you in part by MFC Studios. The views of the show's host and guests do not necessarily reflect those of the management, owners, or staff of this radio station. And now, it came from the radio.
And welcome once again to It Came From the Radio, the official The Big Apple Con. This is your host, Mark Torres, speaking. With me in front of our live studio audience. Courtesy of the East Meadow Public Library, I am here with our senior correspondent, Charlie Saladino.
Hello, fun seekers.
We have Man Jenny Feldy.
Howdy doody.
And we're going to have our special guest we're going to be talking to, with, and about, which is awesome because he's right here. It's a TV producer and author, Jerry Carita.
Hello, everybody. Thank
But
you.
before we do any of that, we have to take it away with the news.
Take it away with the news, Mo.
The news is brought to you in part by the fine folks of sci-fi.radio. That is sci-fi for your Wi-Fi. As well as the fine folks at the Big Apple Con, which we are the official radio show of, celebrating over 25, 6, 7, 8 years of comic bookness and pop culture stuff. For more information, go to www.bigapplecc.com. The next convention is scheduled for November the 23rd, and as of right now, they have discount tickets on. So if you go onto the website, you can actually get discount tickets for that convention way down the line in the future. Also want to give our shout outs for our Patreons, of which there are Danny Grillo, award-winning director Jared Burrell, Kyle Horn, Millie Cortez, Newsday famous Dresden Media, Unchigan, Shadow Rabbit Art, Yasmin Array, Rosa, and the Huracan. Want to have your own little shout out? Go to our website, www.itcamefromradio.com, and you can go into the little button right there, takes you right to our Patreon page. Also on the It Came From Radio website is my book, Designated. A book about two warring alien races fighting over a newly discovered power source. The war finds its way to planet Earth, and as a result, some humans gain abilities. It was recently performed as a radio play at New York Comic Con, as well as the East Meadow Public Library, of which we are right now. As always, we start off with the sad news. So let's see. Actor Bernard Hill died recently. As of this recording, which is May 8th, no cause of death has been announced. While in a slew of movies and TV shows, Bernard is perhaps best known for his role of Kin Theodon in the Lord of the Rings film trilogy, and Captain Edward Smith in the film Titanic, and the warden Luther Plunkett in the Clint Eastwood film True Crime. Now, did you see Titanic, Charlie?
Yes, I did.
I never saw it. Everybody didn't see it. I was one of the few people that did not see it.
You're the one.
I'm the one. I'm that
Yeah.
guy. So he was a captain. So did he have a big role?
I liked him because he went down with the ship.
Did you see Titanic?
Yeah.
Do you remember the captain in the Titanic? No.
I hated the movie.
You
He
hated
went-
Titanic.
He went down
Yeah,
with
I
the
was
ship.
told by the psychic that I was a rich lady who died on the actual Titanic, so that would make sense. And I walked out angry and really cursing that movie. I remember doing that.
Wow.
Did you walk out angry because
I was bored.
Leonardo didn't get on the door with her? Where there was
I just
room?
found the whole thing
Okay.
just very boring.
I was angry about that.
I don't know. Yeah.
I'll never let go. Boom, and she lets him go.
So
I don't understand that. But the captain was good.
There was
The captain was good.
Yeah.
I saw recently there was some interview with Leonardo DiCaprio where people say that all the time, that they're mad that he didn't get to hold on to the piece of door, and he sank, and she was floating like completely out of the water, and
Yeah.
like clearly he could have held on, and he actually like broke it down with physics that if he had also held on to it, they both would have sunk.
Huh.
I've heard that.
All right.
But he had to actually talk about it in an interview. 'cause
Okay,
people
I
were
feel
still
better
angry
now.
about it.
I'm still. Thank you.
26 years
Thank
ago.
you.
You're welcome.
So he was 79 years old. For the second bit of sad news, actress and stunt woman Jean Luan Epper also died recently. Also, no cause of death has been given. While appearing in a handful of films such as Foxy Brown, Beverly Hills Cop 3, and Kill Bill Volume 2, just to name a few, she is more of a stunt performer than anything. Starting at the age of 9, Jean was perhaps the first professional child stunt double, working her way up to being Kate Jackson's double on the original Charlie's Angels in 1976, as well as the stunt double for Linda Carter, the original Wonder Woman, and as well as the Bionic Woman stunt double as well. She was like a pioneer in the stunt performer category. Are you familiar with those shows, Jerry?
I don't. Yeah, I think I've seen all those shows. Yeah.
You're a fan of stunt performers, or you think the actors should do the stunts?
No, I think it totally depends on the actor. Like some people definitely shouldn't. Some people definitely shouldn't. Tom Cruise is very good at it. You know, like there's all those videos of him like attached to the side of the plane in the Mission Impossible movies and stuff.
Right.
Like it's part of the charm of him doing his own thing. But like I used to enjoy the old movies. You never see it anymore, where you could tell there was a stunt double.
Yes.
Like it would be like a diminutive woman on a horse, and then it would cut to a wide shot, and it was like a large man with a wig riding the same horse, you know, for like 4 seconds.
That's fine.
You never see that anymore because you can actually zoom in on the digital stuff, and you can tell. You can always tell.
Benny Hill
to bring
used to
that back.
Do that all the time.
Yes.
You remember Benny?
Yeah.
It was
Benny Hill a lot.
hysterical. He used to,
Down.
One of my favorite jokes was in I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, where they didn't have a female stunt person. They had a guy
Right.
in a terrible wig
Yeah.
doing the stunt. And I'm like, I just have a really good
You
stunt double.
remember in Spaceballs where
In
they
Spaceballs,
catch the stunt doubles.
They
instead of
capture the
real
stunt doubles,
actors.
yes.
You
So,
idiots, you've caught their stunt doubles.
Exactly. So she was 83. Let's see. So what do we have here? So that's it for the sad news.
Yeah.
oh, thank God.
So let's move on to the not as sad news.
Right. Let's
From-
not talk about people who died.
From the That's a Lot of Nuts department. The new film Fall Guy has taken the #1 spot in the domestic box office, pulling in a quote-unquote disappointing $27 million in ticket sales in its first week of release, beating out the re-release of The Phantom Menace for its 25th anniversary, which came in at the #2 spot, making an additional $8.7 million in its first week of release. For those of you keeping track, Dune #2 is still the highest grossing film of this year so far, making $281 million, followed by Kung Fu Panda Part 4 with $188 million. Fall Guy
Anybody
comes
keeping
in,
track? I'm not.
Fall Guy comes in at 19.
He is over there.
Now, Jen, I remember you said you went to see a Star Wars for like a date, right?
Right.
So was that 25 years ago? Because I think you went to see Phantom Menace. Do you remember? Because you said it was a
It was a
horrible,
prequel.
horrible. Yes, one of the prequels.
Yes, it was a prequel, and if you meet someone in the dark and then they pick you up in the daylight, oh, that can be very uncomfortable, the things you will see. I was not prepared for that. Yes.
So, but do you remember any part of the movie at all?
No,
Not at
I
all.
just remember hating it. Like the Titanic.
Okay,
Like
so
movies.
all right.
I like Zoolander. And
You
the
like
farther
Zoolander.
you deviate from Zoolander or Blade, the less I like your movie.
Wait, Blade? Like
Yes, Blade
Wesley
and
Snipes?
Zoolander, yes.
I don't.
Those are my top
What's the
in Fight Club.
what's the correlation between Blade and Zoolander?
They're the
I'm-
man.
They're both
The
awesome.
Blue Steel, the man. Wesley Snipes, Blade, the man. Tyler Durden, the man. They're so cool. Titanic, not the man. Losing, drowning. Don't want to be involved.
All right, all right.
Yeah.
So moving quickly along.
Wait,
What happened?
Wait, you got something?
5 seconds.
Yes.
I just kudos to Ion TV because they knew this was coming. They bought the contract for the old series, The Fall Guy. They're premiering it tomorrow.
Oh, I used to love the Fall Guy. Did you?
Yeah, but it's coming on tomorrow. Ion TV.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
I hope I haven't seen
I
the.
love The Fall Guy.
I haven't seen the movie yet, but I do hope that Lee Majors will be in there in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
moving on, from the Remember Kids, you can sue anyone for anything department. None other than Isaiah Lee, the man who tackled Dave Chappelle during one of his stand-up acts, has filed suit against the
boy.
Hollywood Bowl and its security team for, quote, negligent security and battery. This was after Isaiah, quote, became upset by the discriminatory nature of the comedian's jokes and rushed the stage in protest as the show ended, unquote. The lawyer says, instead of intervening to protect Isaiah, the defendants allowed members of the comedian's entourage, encouraged by the comedian to beat him. As directed and as a direct and approximate result of the above-mentioned conduct and by omissions of the defender, Isaiah was placed in great fear for his physical well-being and has suffered and continues to suffer extreme mental, physical pain, suffering, anguish, fright, nervousness, anxiety, grief, shock, humiliation, indignity, embarrassment, and apprehension. He has since experienced a significant loss of enjoyment of life, and his injuries required immediate surgery. It is said that he cannot fully use his shoulder or engage in certain physical activities that he regularly did before the incident, unquote. He's not after a set amount of dollars. He just wants the security company or whoever else was beating him, twisting his arm out of the socket and spitting on him to answer for going overboard. He should have been detained and taken into custody. That's it. While the security guards did to him and allowed others to do to him goes beyond the scope of what's acceptable. Now, as for the knife that fell out of his pocket, the lawyers are claiming that happened, quote, well after the altercation was underway and that its presence of the knife did not justify force used against him. Lee is seeking judgment against the defendants in a trial jury, as well as an unspecified amount for damages, coverage of his medical and related expenses, legal fees, and further relief.
Wow.
That's insane.
That's why this planet is going to hell in a handbag. Because you got these ridiculous suits. And what is my ridiculous lawsuit? I will tell you. There is this lady, you might know about this,
the dog?
suing a veterinarian because he didn't take care of her son who thinks he's a cat.
Oh.
All right? Where are we going with this world?
Wow.
So,
Yes.
what are your thoughts, Jen, about this whole thing?
You know, I did hear, I wasn't there, but I did hear that it was pretty excessive what they did to the guy. But I gotta say, you know, play stupid games, win stupid prizes, let this be an example. And coincidentally, I was actually starting to say, jokingly, like weeks before this Will Smith punch, I don't really care for doing stand-up. Why am I talking to you? I don't know who you are. How do I know you don't owe me money or you're gonna, do something to me? Or I'm afraid of the audience, and then all this stuff started happening. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of funny. The guy did something stupid. I call that good intuition. Maybe they felt, oh, he might have a knife. I would say their team is smart and they're thinking ahead, and they psychically saw the knife, and they good job, Dave Chappelle, for having such a strong entourage. Yeah.
Did you see the Chappelle special where he talked about this?
I did see the special where he talked
He
about
lays it out in pretty detail. Like this guy, the whole bit is him making fun of his security guard for doing such a terrible job.
Right.
Because the guy got all the way up to him and was able to tackle him.
Mm-hmm.
And Chappelle did the whole thing where he's like, "You're supposed to get the guy before he gets to me." And he's like, the guard is right off camera, but he described in detail how they beat the hell out of that guy.
Yeah.
Which is crazy that it's crazy that it happened.
Yes.
It's crazy that you went to, back up even further. It's crazy that you went to a Chappelle show with the ability to get offended in the first place. Like, you know what you're going in for at a Chappelle show. That's one. Right. Two, it's crazy that you're rushing the stage and trying to get him. And then the fact that they were able to get, it's all insane, you know? Yeah. I don't know if I agree that it's a frivolous lawsuit, because based on Chappelle's explanation of it, it's like, they had him under control pretty quickly. They just kept going. And the way he tells the story is very funny, but it's also apparently tragic enough that he felt like he could sue.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm like, if you're gonna go and with the intent of attacking somebody on stage,
if you're offended by anything, you can't go to a show that Chappelle is the main comic. You just can't do it.
And do you think if you were in the jury, would you yes or no?
I mean, based on Chappelle's retelling of it, I would probably give that guy some money.
Really? Wow. All right.
Yeah, a couple dollars.
I mean,
$5.
Maybe $5.
So we could get a new knife.
A disappointing $5. It's not like the Fall Guy's disappointing $27 million. I hope that one day in my life, $27 million is disappointing. Right. That would be really nice.
So I've mentioned this a couple of times on the show before, but I used to work at a movie theater for 10 years, and we had a lawsuit for the theater. So I was working one day, and a kid, probably like 12 or 13, comes up to me. It's a busy day. He walks up to me, and he was like, "My friend hurt himself in the theater." And I was like, "I don't want to deal with this," but I was the one around. I was the manager, so I had to go. And I walked into the theater. I walked down the aisle, and this kid, probably like 16, 17 years old, had a dislocated knee. Because it was like swollen, he had like shorts on, so I've never seen a dislocated knee before, like right up close. I'm like, holy crap, this is really bad. And I go, well, what the hell happened to you? And he goes, well, I was watching this scary movie. I put my feet up in front of the stair. I got scared, and it popped out. And I was like, oh my God. So we called the cops. The cops came, and the cops were like, well, what happened? I explained to the cops. The cops thought it was hilarious.
Whoa.
The ambulance guys thought it was hilarious. They took him away, and that was the end of that.
I can't wait to hear what this lawsuit is about.
Years later,
The seat or the movie was too scared, or
Years-
was too scared,
Yeah,
or what?
right.
years later, we get a call. The corporation office comes to me and like, we have. You remember that time when I get this located? I was like, yeah. He goes, well, he's suing you for $50,000 or something.
You personally?
Well, the company.
Okay,
And since
okay.
I was there,
Right,
I had to
right.
be the representative. And apparently, his story was that he was walking. I'm going to stand up for this. So he was walking in the aisle. He walked into his seat, but there was ice and soda, and he slipped on ice and soda. But according to his story, that he got up, he turned around and walked out, and he slipped, and he hit this knee on the armrest, and that caused it to get dislocated.
Got it.
Now, I remember distinctly when I came down, he's sitting here, and now Jen is me. I'm looking this way, that it was this leg that
Right,
was
the wrong
dislocated.
leg.
But he was complaining that his other leg
Right.
was dislocated. So I had to go to a deposition, they're asking him questions, and I'm thinking, well, maybe it's not my leg that got dislocated. Obviously, he's gonna remember it better than me, because this is years later. And he's talking, the kid's telling his story. I'm like, well, that didn't happen at all.
Wow.
And he says, yeah, I dislocated his left knee. And the lawyer goes, his left knee? He goes, yeah, this knee over here.
Oh, wow.
And he looks at the paper and he says, the medical report says his right knee. And he went, and he goes, yes, it was his right knee.
Wow.
But it still went to trial.
Right.
Yeah.
And according to, and because it was so insane that I had to go in front of a jury, I had to explain my whole situation. And our lawyer said that because of my testimony, we won the case. Because we were the evil
See, if
business, the evil corporation that is just negligent and that made this poor kid have his knee dislocated.
if I was on that jury, you probably would have had to give him some money too.
Really?
I have a bad knee. I have a really sympathy for anybody with a sore knee.
Right. He was
Give him a few
lying,
dollars.
clearly lying.
Totally, give him a few dollars.
$6.
It's a bad knee. Bad knees are really painful.
Even though it's the wrong knee.
100%. Maybe he has two bad knees. Give him a little bit more money now. See?
Fair. $6.
Give him a free movie, lifetime free movie?
Lifetime popcorn.
Lifetime popcorn. All
Lifetime
right.
popcorn.
So moving on.
That'll help his knee.
Yeah, exactly.
Also from the That's a Lot of Nuts department. At a recent auction, a CGC graded 9.8 copy of The Amazing Spider-Man #1 sold for a record-breaking $1,380,000. For that issue last year, a 9.6 copy sold for $520,000. CGC says, for a buyer in today's market to obtain a copy of this issue in 9.8 could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. This Spider-Man #1 represents literally the launching of its own title that lasted for decades, so historically, it's a very important book in the Spider-Man universe. For those of you who don't know or care for that matter, the book was originally printed in 1963 and had a cover price of 12 cents. Now, for since we're in a live
Here we
studio
go.
audience,
This is
we
what I
have
was just gonna say.
a visual representation of what a graded book is, which is something I'm holding up right here. Now, one of the things, this is a 9.8 of my comic book, and what's interesting is that we've talked about this on our show many times, that we realistically cannot prove 100% that this book is in this case. We're led to believe that it is. I mean, it's my book, I can see the front and the back, but I cannot say, if my life depended on it, that this book is actually in here. And there was a case for the company, which is CGC, which made this book right here, which is the same company that graded that book, that people were breaking this open, which are quite easily able to do. If you go on YouTube, there's videos on how to open it up, and replacing this label with a different number. So, that comic book may or may not even be a real comic book of that value that someone just paid $1 million, over $1.3 million for.
So, yeah, he paid over $1 million for it, and it's going to stay in there, never knowing if it's the real thing. How smart is that guy?
And we've talked about this many times, like, what would you do if you paid over $1 million for that? What would you do with it? Do you have any suggestions of what you would do with this if this was $1 million book you just bought?
Sell it to some other idiot who bought it from, like me, for $2 million.
Exactly.
Jen, what are your thoughts?
I think you should buy a house that you can't open the front door. Like, more effective.
You say, what would I do if I felt like someone had scammed me?
No. Well, if you bought a book
Yeah.
that was graded
Right.
for $1 million, $2 million, $3
So now I have a
million,
book worth.
you have this book
What do
now.
I do with the book?
Yeah.
Do I sell it in a heartbeat.
You would just resell it.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a bunch of these books that are like great, and I had like the first appearance of Wolverine. I've had 2 of those in my time, like trading these things, which are also kind of valuable. Not a 9.8, not anything like that, but yeah, in a heartbeat, I'd sell it. $1 million. I can think of a million different things that I would rather use the money for.
And these
than
are
something that's
also
going to sit in a closet somewhere. You know?
these are also people with money to burn. I mean, that they, that they could go out. How much do you have on you?
Do you remember the submarine that imploded going down to the Titanic?
Yes.
Speaking of Titanic, I remember everyone was like, can you imagine, they each paid $1 million, I think. It was over 1.75 or something like that.
Right.
And I looked up, because everyone was like, can you imagine paying $1.7 million to get on a submarine to go look at the Titanic? That's crazy. It's like an hour, a couple of hours of your life, you just give away $1 million. And I did the math, and I was like, I took my own like net worth and the net worth of the average person on that submarine, right? And compared like what the equivalent of $1.7 million to them is like 85 cents to me. So would you pay 85 cents
to go on?
If someone said I can show you the Titanic, and I'd be like, yeah, I'd give you twice that. You know what I mean? Without even thinking about it.
Right.
It's crazy though. When you have that much money, it just doesn't have the same value.
Right.
So
Exactly.
$1 million for Spider-Man, I'll take that.
Fair enough. So let's see. So we have one last bit of news from the Hey, I was in that follow-up department. As mentioned in a previous episode, on the heels of Lionsgate and Blumhouse announcing a new Blair Witch movie, original Blair Witch actor Joshua Leonard was upset about his role, or lack thereof, in all the following Blair Witch sequels, as well as any compensation or credit that he felt that he was lacking. But now he and the other 2 leads have created an open letter posted on social media. The letter, in part, reads, Our film has been rebooted twice. Both times were a disappointment from the fan box office critical perspective. Neither of these films made with significant creative input from the original team. As the insiders who created the Blair Witch and have been listening to what fans love and want for 25 years, we're your single greatest, yet thus far unutilized secret weapon. As the literal faces of what has become a franchise, their likeness, voices, and real names are inseparably tied to the Blair Witch Project. Their unique contributions not only defend the film's authenticity, but continue to resonate with the audiences around the world. We celebrate our film's legacy, and equally, we believe these actors deserve to be celebrated for their enduring association with the franchise. The letter also says that they should receive money, quote, equivalent to the sum that they would have been allotted through SAG-AFTRA had they had a proper union or legal representation when the film was made, as well as, quote, meaningful consultation on any future projects in the series, and a yearly $60,000 grant for Lionsgate to pay aspiring filmmakers to make their first feature-length movie. Now, I guess you did not like the Blair Witch Project?
It was the most, the first one was very, very inventive, I have to say that. And actually, when the people showed up on MTV, the audience was shocked because they thought they really died.
Yeah, it was marketing.
They were in shock. So for that reason alone, it was well worth the thing, very inventive. But you really can't, make a sequel to that.
Right.
It's like beating a dead horse. It's like making a sequel to Sophie's Choice.
Sophie's Other Choice.
Yeah, you just don't do it.
Well, this time she makes the other choice.
Take this one.
It's one of those, what are they called? The broken, what are those called? The kinds of movies where you see people take both paths.
Oh, the multiverse?
Yeah, the multiverse thing, but there's it's like a broken mirror. There's a term for it. I can't remember.
So, I remember the Blair Witch Project, and I didn't see it, but the marketing campaign, as Jerry said, was astounding.
It's amazing.
Because everybody thought, the majority thought that it was real, and that's what it was pushed as.
Right.
I didn't see it, and I worked at Blockbuster for 10 years, and when we got at Blockbuster, I was like, let me watch it. And this horror movie, there's like 2 different types of horror movies that I watched. There's horror movies that you're introduced, yes, you're horror movies, 3 different types of horror movies. There's the horror movies where you have the main characters, and you just introduce them to see who gets killed, and you get through all the killing. And then there's horror movies that have like a whole bunch of information in the beginning of the movie that you should pay attention to because it pays off at the end. But as I was watching the Blair Witch Project, I wasn't paying attention to the information in the beginning. And at the end, it explains everything. So much so I had to go back and rewatch. I was like, oh, I get it. But otherwise, I thought it was a terrible movie of nothing happening. And then the way it ends was like, it's such a weird cliffhanger. Like you don't know what's going on, and the film just ends because it's supposed to be found footage. So that always resonated with me for what it was crazy. And I did like the second Blair Witch Project. I did not like the second Blair Witch Project because they made the reboot that came out a couple of years ago, and so I don't know what they're going to do with this one. But were you a fan of the Blair Witch, Jerry?
I remember really enjoying the same thing. I thought the idea of the movie was very inventive. The way that they marketed it was brilliant. Like making people think it was really just found footage of a bunch of kids disappearing in the woods, and like the last thing they saw. It's like so smart, and that's something you can't do now, because that's what like everything on the internet is. It's all found footage. It's all like behind the scenes, like stuff you're not supposed to see. Access to celebrities, to everyone. It's something that like people are too savvy now. I think at that point it was right before. How old was the original movie?
25 years ago.
25 years ago. So before the internet, before everyone was so savvy about, realized like so much on the internet now is not real. AI is like making it even crazier. But at the time, no one had done anything like that before. I mean, people thought War of the Worlds was real when he did that radio broadcast.
That's right.
But I don't know if that was an intentional marketing choice. I think people just thought it was real.
Well, senior correspondent Charlie Saldina, were you
Hello.
there when the War of the Worlds?
Oh, I wasn't there, but
I'm asking about.
He's not that
I
senior.
know that
Were you at the radio listening to the broadcast?
No.
Okay, so you missed it.
But I got back in the 70s. They were selling the records on TV and I bought the whole big bands and the radio, comedy radio and I sat there like I was back in the day and put that on. And that was pretty, like if you didn't know, Orson Welles was a genius. He made that like a newscast and if you turned it on in the middle of that, there were people committing suicide because they thought this was it.
Wow.
That they had to come back in the middle and say, look, this is just a radio show. Wow. There were people, like, they figured they had it. They weren't going to get killed by these Martians, but that was one of the greatest,
This reminds me of a marketing campaign for.
By the way, that was in the 30s. Thank you very much.
I don't know. It was a long time ago. Before my time. I remember that there was a bug commercial, and the bug looked so realistic that people were trying to kill the bug on the TV and broke the TV.
No.
And they had to let people know that it was a fake commercial. Yeah.
God.
Yeah, that happened. I remember that happening. So
You know the thing that Monty Python wanted to do with the volume? Do you know that? Have you ever read this? They had a sketch they wanted to do when they were still on the air in the UK. They wanted to gradually, over the course of the sketch, the volume would get lower and lower, so everyone in the country would have to get up, because this is like pre-everyone having a remote control. Everyone had to get up and slowly turn the volume on their TVs all the way up, and then at the end of the sketch, they would just make a really loud noise. And whatever the FCC over there said, no, you can't do that. You actually can't do that. But they fought it for a while. It was like an idea they had for a funny sketch. That would have been fun.
Now they just make the commercials louder.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's awful.
Oh, it's terrible. You go to commercial. I'm getting that remote. Thank God we have a remote.
So that's it for our news. So we're going to take a quick break in front of our live studio audience.
All right.
Hey everybody, this is Todd McFarlane of the Record Setting Spawn comic series. And if you're looking for any kind of cool conversation about creators, about entertainment, about all that good stuff, you go to It Came From the Radio.
Really big up with This is your host Mark Torres speaking for our 80th live show at the East Meadow Public Library in front of a live studio audience. Senior correspondent Charlie Saladino.
Hey, how's everybody?
Man Jenny Feldy.
Hey.
And our special guest who's going to be talking to us about Jerry Carita. So Jerry, I have usually when I have people on the show I've met previously. I haven't met you until today. but I've heard of your work.
Okay.
So is that something that you like to have, is let your work precede you and tell about your work ahead of time?
I mean, it depends, because a lot of I am a reality TV producer, so it depends on your feeling about reality TV. You know, so if I walk into a room and everyone's like, "You did what?" You know, then I have to explain myself. But you also get, "You did what?" And then I get to explain myself in like a fun way. So it depends. It depends on the audience.
So as a producer of reality TV,
Yes.
Can I pull the curtain back and say that it's not really real? Are you allowed to say that? Or are you going to give the scripted answer?
Yeah, this is probably a violation of every non-disclosure of on every show I've ever done. I would say it really, really, really depends on the show and kind of the setup of the show and what kind of show it is and what network it's for and all those things. Like, if anything is happening in the real world and you show up with a camera, you're affecting it. People know they're on camera. They know they're performing for a camera. Yeah. They're going to act differently. They're going to, the Jersey Shore people didn't get to be on Jersey Shore because they behave like that all the time. They knew the camera was there. They knew they were turning it on more for the camera, you know? So you're affecting it by being there. But on a show like, Wife Swap, for example, the setup of the show is something that would never happen. You're trading wives with somebody. But almost everything that happened in the show, apart from that, which was set up by the show, was real. So that was actually the realest thing I've ever worked on, believe it or not. And that's like the one that is a very kind of formulaic setup, So like they were never really going to swap wives. But after that happens in the show, almost everything that happens, their interaction, you're guiding them, you're asking them questions that are leading, you're trying to, lay a breadcrumb trail to what is going to be conflict so that they can resolve it later in the show. And that's what the producing the show is. But it's real. Like, their arguments are real. The disagreements on that show are real. When the mom wants to move out of the house because the dad is crazy, or vice versa, it's all real, So it depends on the show. Yeah.
I saw a couple episodes. Are there any wife swap episodes that you wish you might have produced? Like maybe presidential, like Nancy Reagan switch with Big Mike or Michelle Obama. That could be a cool one.
Presidential wife swap?
Yeah, presidential wife swap would be pretty cool. That would be a pretty fun.
And one goes to the White House, one goes to like whatever
Not
house.
The White House?
Yeah, whatever house they'll live in.
I mean, there were a lot of episodes I did that were not on that level, but that was always the idea. It was always kind of like, you get people, everyone remembers it as like, oh, it's the very religious family, or it's the family with the lederhosen that runs the Airbnb, not an Airbnb, it doesn't exist back then.
Okay.
But, in a bed and breakfast or something. But then it always came down to, one family had was strict with their kids and had rules and regulations and guidelines, and the other family was a lot more loose. And eventually everyone is yelling at each other like, your kids are going to end up in jail, and it ends up in a fight. And that's the producing. That's just like,
So they do say that sometimes if you're being recorded, you kind of forget that you're being recorded.
Yeah.
Do you, as a producer, you wait for that moment to happen, and then you're like, we'll use more of that footage?
Yeah.
Or you just use whatever footage you have and make a show out of it?
I mean, I honestly, you end up doing both. Because you get notes from network executives where they'll ask for something, and the only version of the thing that they're hoping for is the part that isn't real, or that is they're still being self-conscious or just saying it for camera. But what's nice is if you're lucky and you're doing a show where, like I've done a lot of tattoo shows, right? Those people are really good tattoo artists. That's real. They really will talk to the person whose tattoo they're doing and get the story. Like, who is this in honor of, and what's the backstory behind this? Why do you want this tattoo? Everyone has a good story to tell. And so that's all real. The drama among them working in the shop on almost every one of those shows, like none of that's real, because usually none of those artists actually work in that shop. Like none of them, Like the way tattoo shops work is they freelance all over the country in their own shop, and then they'll come visit Ami James's shop in Miami, or so-and-so's shop in like Portland, Oregon, and they'll do a 2-week stint there. It's like a barbershop. They'll rent a chair,
right?
And then they're doing a residency there. It brings in new clientele. Everyone's happy. But what they'll do on a show like that is they'll just cast like this guy from over here, this person from over here, this woman from the South, and they'll bring them together into Chicago, and they'll say Chicago Inc. And now they all work there. Right. We all came together. Right. Like, they don't work there, But their interaction, if you're lucky, the people are really good at what they do, so you don't have to fake that. And if you're lucky, the people in the show have a real relationship, so that you can get to that moment. Like I always try to direct those things like it's improv, where you kind of give them, like, I need you by the end of this scene to get in the car and drive away. Whatever else is happening in the scene, like, I just, when you're done, just get up and leave. So I don't have to tell you, I need a shot of you opening the door. Just feel the moment. When you feel good, move on to the next thing. If I need you to come back and say something differently, I'll ask you. Or if I need to back up and get a wide shot or whatever, you know, I'll do that if I have to. But I try to get all that while they're going. And if you're lucky, they forget. And they'll get, you're asking, like, family, the reason Wife Swap worked is you're asking people to argue with each other about something they really feel strongly about. So eventually they forget you're there, and it's just a mom with one philosophy and a dad with a totally different philosophy, and they're forced into a building together until they argue about it. And who can represent what they believe more, you know? So they forget you're there, and that's why you get the crazy stuff on that show. You know, the episode that I did on that show that everyone remembers is, this was a big YouTube video way back too. It was a little kid named King Curtis, and he moved out. He's the only kid that ever moved out during a wife swap, and that was one of my episodes.
Interesting.
He, like, packed a little bag. We filmed him packing his bag. You know, the new mom had, like, thrown out his chicken nuggets, and he was very upset.
Oh my God.
Very, very upset. And he packed a bag and he moved to Grandma's house for the night because Grandma had chicken nuggets for him. You know, and that was it. And the dad was like, if he wants to go, he can go. Like, they were fine with it, so we just followed it, and that all really happened. And when you watch it, it feels like you're just following it around with a camera. Like, it doesn't feel produced because it wasn't. We didn't know that was going to happen. We didn't plan that.
Interesting.
So what is your worst experience that ever happened on a reality show that you did? That you said, whoa.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a lot of those. A lot of them are on things that no one would have heard of because it was like development projects that never happened. Shows that we never should have even been exploring, you know. I did a tape, this is so bad. I did a tape in this town in Beaumont, Texas, and it was sort of like, if you've ever seen Amish Mafia, you know, the premise is like the Amish have their own internal police force that deal with everything so that they don't deal with outsiders. This was similar. It wasn't Amish. It was just a local pastor in a town that was like, Beaumont is not a great place to live. Like, Beaumont, Texas is like Camden or, you know, the worst part of Detroit. It's like in that, you know, that like sphere of...
Louisiana.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Like, exactly. And so he was a pastor there, and the whole premise was that he would deal with stuff so that you don't have to call the cops on your brother who's on probation. Because if you call the cops on your brother because he stole something from you and he's on drugs, you're sending your brother to jail for 10 years. So I did a tape about him, and the whole idea was he would go deal with real situations. And when we got there, like, everything I had been told about him was wrong. He was literally 1.5 feet shorter than I was told he was. Like, I was told he's this big, Hulk, like, badass guy, you know? And it was really bananas. And we shot a scene where he was talking to this woman who was, like, talking about her child who was on drugs. And it was like, all he had to do was ask questions and listen. That's all he had to do was tell me about the situation you're in. And as soon as she started talking, she got emotional. And he stopped, and he goes, hold on one second. Jerry, is this what you want, all this, like, emotional stuff? And I was like,
What?
just look at, she's crying in front of, just don't talk to me. I literally was filming it from like 30 yards away to give them space.
Yeah.
I was like, why are you talking to me? She's upset. Talk to her. The whole experience there was like, yes, the whole experience there was like that. Everything the guy, literally, he was like, what should I do when should I be like, should I lean in with my posture? What should I do with my face? And I was like, I can't, what should you do with your face? You should take it all the way over there and leave me alone, please. Like, that was probably the craziest. And that was a thing that as soon as we finished filming it, we knew, like, this is not a thing, this should not be a show. You know, I think he's in jail now. Like,
oh wow.
Yeah, it was a crazy. So that was probably the most, like, why am I here? Why am I doing this for a living?
You should do a spin-off like Beaumont 90210, something like that, and you have that, like, you know.
That's funny.
Do you find that people come to you to be on reality shows to try to use that as a springboard for other projects, or are they actually real, like, quote unquote real people? Is that what you're trying to?
Well, I mean, you get, you know, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on IMDb with all my credits. Like, I'll get emails from people who are friends with just an idea on paper, or them. You mean themselves? Like asked like
for being for casting.
Yeah.
Like if
I
you
don't
have
get I don't get a lot of that because if you look at my resume, I haven't done a lot of like if I had done stuff at MTV way back like Made. You get a lot. You get everyone being like, "I want to be I want to be a cheerleader. I want to be whatever," and they're pitching ideas for episodes that star them. But most of what I've done is like, it's Wife Swap and then like American Pickers, and I did the first season of Counting Cars. But most of the things are like that. It's like people who do something for a living. It's a family business or something like that, and they work together to do something. And like what I do is try and get them to. Do funny stuff, entertaining stuff, like be the biggest, loudest, funnest version of themselves in front of the camera. So I don't get a lot of people who are like, everyone at some point is like, this is the show. Like us making the show, that should be the show. That happens on every show you work on. At some point you're in an edit day with an editor at like 3 a.m. and you're really angry about a bunch of notes and the editor looks at you and goes, this is the show. And it's like, no, it's like no one wants to watch you and me arguing over a music edit at like 3 a.m. Like, no.
So how do you go from being a TV producer to a comic book writer? Where does that jump happen?
So about 12 years ago, I worked on Comic Book Man, which was the Kevin Smith show. Kevin Smith is the filmmaker. If you don't know, he's the indie filmmaker, and filmmaker and now like epic podcaster and huge crier.
Did he cry a lot back then?
The way I would say less so. I probably was working with him on that show before the crying phase because he talks about it a lot, so I'm not like making fun too bad, but he's been a stoner for a very long time, and now he always talks about how he's like emotional like an old stoner, so everything is like something nostalgic that kind of hits him in the feels, so he'll watch comic book movies, and the thing where they just want you to be like, oh, I want to root for that person will really hit him hard, he's a sweet. He just bought his the childhood movie theater in his hometown,
and he has the film festival there.
Exactly. The Smod Castle, exactly. So I was working on Comic Book Men. I had never read comic books as a kid. My geek thing as a kid was TV shows. I watched all the Star Trek shows with my mom. That was like my foray into it. And then when I got to be a teenager, it was Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel, and then like the Matrix movies. And it was mainly TV shows, but then also arguments about like, my buddy in college and I had this argument in a classroom at like literally midnight one night with a chalkboard, and we were drawing out timelines from the Terminator movies. And we were arguing about could you actually avoid Judgment Day, and what would have to happen. And, like, is time a closed loop, or is it like a multiverse of, and it was like that's the kind of stuff I was into, like arguing about that kind of stuff. So not comic books. No one ever handed me a comic. There's that moment that a lot of comic fans have where it's like I was 12 and someone gave me a comic and I was like,
this is the greatest thing ever.
I found my people. I didn't have that like when I was a kid. So I was working on Comic Book Men. It was for AMC. They were doing The Walking Dead TV show at the time, which is based on like the biggest indie comic ever. And so The Walking Dead was just around. It was on the walls in the shop. It was the only comic we were allowed to show. Because of like, originally. Later DC like loosened up.
Just like when you have a Sony movie, they only able to use Sony products.
Exactly. So I was in a comic shop for hours a day, so I just started reading The Walking Dead, and that was my first comic book series that I read. And then from there I started collecting some of the older books. I went back and I read like old X-Men, all the old X-Men stories that became the movies 30, 40 years later. I went back and did my homework. Around the same time, my cousin is a comic book writer. My cousin's James Tynan. And it's a fairly prominent comic book writer now. He wrote Batman for a few years. He was just getting into writing comics himself. So I started reading all of his comics and The Walking Dead at the same time, and I fell in love.
When you're doing a show in a comic book store, which you're not a comic book fan, was that an odd experience for you to do?
No, because it's the same arguments. Like the structure of that show was Pawn Stars. It was someone walking into his shop and going, I have a thing, I want to sell it to you, how much will you give me for it? Banter, negotiation, yes or no, right? Same structure as like a basic TV show like that. We got to be weird because there were no interviews in that show. We used Kevin's podcast setup as the interview. So the whole story would be told through the guys in the shop telling Kevin what happened this week in the store. And so we had to do some fun storytelling stuff there. And other than that, all the banter, like Kevin and his buddies, or just the guys in the shop, Brian, like Walt and Brian, they would argue about old comic book stuff. And it's the same arguments about time, time travel in the can you avoid Judgment Day in the Terminator movies? Same kind of stuff. So I had a lot of fun just throwing out ideas, and they would do that. They would just sit there and go, if you could travel back in time, what would you do? And it would be a funny argument. It would eventually end in one of them making a very off-color joke because the show was on at midnight and we could get away with that. And then they would all laugh and I'd throw out a different topic. There were days we called banter days on set, where it was just the 4 characters in the show sitting around. They had an old poker table in the back of the store, and they would be reading, working, whatever, and we would just throw out topics and let them go. And they would talk about it until it was funny, and we'd move on to something else. But the whole day would just be arguments I've been having with buddies since high school.
Well, you don't.
I was very cool. So cool.
You don't have to be a comic book expert. You just have to be you're very creative.
Right.
I mean, the whole cast of The Big Bang Theory, they're not geeks. They never were, and it looks like they were doing this for years.
Right. Yeah, and I would say that about when I started writing comics. It's a story, and whether you're filming something happening for a few months and then sitting in an edit bay and trying to make it into a story, or you scripted it out beforehand, or you are writing a comic book that an artist has to translate into something that is a visual story. It's just a story. They follow the same rules. It has to be compelling. There has to be some kind of an arc. Something has to change. Something has to happen that's interesting. There has to be conflict and resolution. I'm working on a TV show now for Discovery Channel. It's the same thing. What's the beginning and the middle and the end of this story? And then, whether you're building it out of footage or writing it on a page, it's sort of the same. It's the same skill set.
So, as a producer, do you have the intent to make your comic into something? As there was the transmedia, I think that's the term.
Transmedia, yeah, that's a good one. There's one that I'm writing that I think in my head is already a cartoon. And then this one, Cicada Samurai, which I wrote, this is the first one I did. I'm not thinking of it as a cartoon, as a translation. But the other one I'm actually co-writing it with my son. It's called The Grizzly Crew. It's about a group of pirate bears. It's an idea that he sort of had and told me, a different son.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. My older boy is here, he's 13. My 8-year-old, can I tell the story? I'll tell you what happened.
Yeah.
So my 8-year-old walked into my office at home 2 years ago, so he was 6. And I had an artificial intelligence, one of those art generators, it had just, the Mid-Journey, I think that was the one I was using. It had just come out, like everyone else, I was logging into it and trying to figure out, is this the beginning of the end of civilization as we know it, right? So I was messing around with it, and he walked into the room and he goes, what's this? And I'm a moron, so I answer questions when my kids ask them. So I go, it's an artificial intelligence art generator. And he's not a moron, so he goes, well, what does that mean? And I explained it to him. And he right away was like, okay, well, can it make a Spider-Man monkey? I don't know, Spider-Man monkey. And he pooped one out very quickly, and he was very happy. And then he said, what about a minion wizard? And I'm like, minion wizard. And it made a little goofy-looking minion wizard. And then he said, what about a pirate bear? And so I put in pirate bear. And then he was just kind of, it made this when it first came out especially, the faces were bad and hands were weird. It was like this giant silhouetted, scary-looking, weird thing. And he just was staring at it. Again, he's 6. And by the way, he's afraid of bears. The notion that bears exist is terrifying. Terrifies him.
Smart.
So yeah, So he's just staring at it, and I was like, okay, he's having a moment. I'm going to go back to work. And I just started working, and suddenly he goes, his name's Captain Grizzly. And I was like, what? Huh? I'm not even paying attention. He goes, Captain Grizzly. And I said, who? He goes, the bear, Dad. The bear is Captain Grizzly. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's cute. That's very good. That's good. Captain Grizzly. I love that. I kept on working, and then he just kept talking, and he pitched me the whole story. He was like, he's the captain of a pirate ship full of bears. I go, that's hilarious. And he goes, they go looking for treasure, and when they find it, it's not gold, it's honey. It's wax, and when they squeeze it, it's filled with honey, because Dad, bears like honey. And I'm like, and he just kept going, and then finally he goes, it's called the Grizzly Crew. I swear to you this happened in the 30 seconds after the thing made this bear. And that's when I stopped and I started writing it all down, And I told him, let's write it as a comic book. So we did, and it's being drawn now. I raised some money for it on Kickstarter, and so that's a story that I'm now writing with my son.
And does he get executive producer credit?
Right.
His name is going to be in the book. I make sure to credit him everywhere I go. Absolutely, he's the co-creator. I'm the writer. He's the co-creator.
Have you had a lot of situations like that for ideas popping up?
I mean, yeah, they come out of, those kinds of things come out of nowhere. I get a lot of ideas that I talk myself out of. I get a lot of ideas that I'm like, that's, or I find someone who already did something similar enough that I talk myself out of it. But that one I just ran with right away. It reminded me of like a lot of cartoons I watched as a kid, like, Tailspin and Gummy Bears and stuff like that, like visual. So I reached out to my friend who's an artist, Nick Justice, and he sent me character designs, and we went off of it. I didn't look up if there's a Pirate Bear cartoon already. I apologize.
Oh, no.
But yeah, that one to me is a cartoon. That one to me looks and feels like
Yeah.
he's a really big Looney Tunes fan.
Right.
Huge Looney Tunes fan, which is hilarious in 2024. Loves Looney Tunes.
So, we've had many people on the show as guests, and we've had a lot of brother sisters, husband and wife teams. Have you ever had a father and son team?
Yeah.
Like, if he's misbehaving, go to your room, no comic for you, writing today. Like, how does that work when
That's
right.
you're working with your son to create something, but still being the dad?
Yeah, it's hard because he's a much more demanding boss than I am. Like every day he was asking me, are there new pages, Dad? Did the guy get us new
Wow.
pages? He gave the artist notes on the character, like real notes. He told me, so
Show me the dailies.
the main character is a koala bear, right? And so
Chlamydia.
he told me that. He goes, Dad, the main guy is going to be a koala bear. And I was like, well, koala bears, again, I argue with an 8-year-old, right? I'm like, koala bears aren't really bears. They're marsupials. It's a different kind of animal. When I call them, koala means bear. It's not really a bear, though. And he goes, well, maybe he doesn't know that. And I was like, what? And he's like, he doesn't know he's not really a bear. He thinks he's going to be in the grizzly crew because as far as he knows, he's a bear. I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So I showed him the first drawing of Jimmy the koala bear, and he gave notes on it. He's like, he doesn't have enough thumbs. I was like, what? He goes, Dad, koalas have 2 thumbs. He likes to watch animal videos on YouTube, right? So as soon as he knew there was a koala bear, he started watching videos about koalas. Koalas have 2 opposable thumbs. I had no idea.
And
So-
chlamydia.
Yeah, that's it. Every one of them. Every single one of
You
them.
keep on hitting that.
Well, it's an important feature of
He
koalas.
said, this bear, Dad, the feet need to look like hands, it needs 2 thumbs, and it needs chlamydia, said my 7-year-old. That's what happened.
So,
I see that you're grooming a new Spielberg.
I'm trying.
Maybe.
I'm trying with him. Yeah.
He's grooming you.
I think he's grooming me, yeah. He's very funny.
so
really cool.
what does your artist have to say? Well, my kid says to do, like,
I mean,
how does that conversation happen?
the thing, he laughs, but then he's like, yeah, he's right. He laughs, but right away it's like, it's a, like for a character like that, it's a nice little quirk, something for him to feel, it's different. It's the thing that makes him different from everyone else on the Grizzly crew, something they could make fun of him for, something that he could overcome or show that, like, because my feet are weird. This is the other thing. He said, Dad, his feet have to be like hands because that's what they look like. And I was like, yeah, but like, they're going to be in boots sometime, like, does it matter? And he goes, because he's going to be the one who's really good. He didn't know what a crow's nest was. He knew it existed. He didn't know the term.
Right.
But he said he's going to be the one that climbs up the pole into the thing, into the thing up there. I was like, again,
I
so
see
much,
it.
8 years old, so much better at this than I am already.
I
Like,
see it right now. You're going to make a fortune with the merchandise only. You can make koala gloves.
Yes.
And now everybody be wearing koala gloves
I love
I can
it.
help you grip
with opposable
for pole
thumbs.
dancers.
Extra opposable thumbs.
Yeah, comes with its own crow's nest.
Are you aware of Axe Cop?
Axe Cop, I do know about this, yes.
So it was like a 5-year-old, I think
Yes.
it was, that co-created with, I think it was his brother.
Yes.
And it became a cartoon and became a wild, popular thing. Do you think that nowadays kids are more or less creative and imaginative with all the stimulations that they're getting?
I mean, I think it depends on the kid. I think they have a lot more information, so there's more things for them to process and bounce off of and come up with weird stuff. But there's definitely like an effect where you can kind of do this and get a lot of the physical stimulation or like the biochemical pleasure of doing something creative by just staring at a screen now. And so there's more of that, so you probably get fewer people trying to be creative or following through on it. But the ones who do it have a lot more to work with. You know what I mean? There's so much more information. Again, like, I had no idea opposable thumb. He knows stuff that I don't know because he can scroll through, look up whatever he wants and learn about it.
So we're almost out of time.
Okay.
So let's do social media stuff. Where can people find out more about you, find out more of your work? Where can they buy your book? All that stuff. Go.
I'm on all the things that I'm on as Thorny Comics. Thorny Comics is the name of my publishing company. So I'm at Thorny Comics on Twitter. On Instagram's the one I normally use, and I'm the only Thorny Comics on Facebook as far as I know, as of recording. That's where to find me. All the books so far, I have 2 that I've raised money for that I wrote. I've published a few other projects that I'm not the writer on, but I'm the editor and publisher for, and we do them all through Kickstarter. So you can, if you look me up on Kickstarter, you'll find all the projects we've done. I'm about to go live with the first full issue of Cicada Samurai. We just finished the first Grizzly Crew issue, but there'll be two or three more, this year before the year's up.
All right, and you were nice enough to give for a raffle. You're going to give all 3 variant colors.
Yeah, so I have this is a short story I wrote called Cicada Samurai. The artist is Mary Landro. Mary did these 2 covers. Cicada Samurai is about a cicada. You guys know cicadas, the bugs. This came out of the pandemic, and it's basically like a cicada who is the only adult. Cicadas live 17 years underground. They come up above ground for 2 weeks. So the idea is it's like prom night. So imagine there are a billion teenagers going out to prom night to make bad decisions on their one night to party before they actually know they're all going to die, right? And your job as the lone adult, the immortal cicada samurai, is to try and keep them safe so that they can, there can be more cicadas 17 years later. Because if they all get eaten by monsters and things, so that's it. It's like a parent trying to keep a billion teenagers safe on the worst night. To try
safe from people, safe from
people,
kids,
foxes. There's a
stomping on
cicada killing samurai. There's a cicada killing hornet is the main villain. And after I know you got to wrap up, but I can tell you more about the story after. But this is the short story I wrote. This is the first comic book I wrote. So this is the original character design by Takashi Okazaki, who's the creator of Afro Samurai, is a popular anime and manga.
Very cool. Well done.
Does everybody have a raffle ticket?
Everybody got one of these guys? Got one.
All right, pick it out. So you got the winner.
Such responsibility.
I'm making you work.
Winner is
376691.
376691.
6691.
91 going once.
376691.
91. That's you.
Bingo.
As always, we love giving out free stuff at our live show, courtesy of the East Meadow Public Library. The East Meadow Public Library has tons and tons of programming and events, most of which are free. So you go to www.eastmeadow.info. Our next show is going to be on Wednesday, June the 12th at 7 p.m. We have comic book creator from Brazil, Mario Cal, will be our guest. So Charlie Salvatino, do you have any final thoughts?
Yes, I do. I just want to thank Jerry so much. Can't wait to see your son up there in the big director's chair and stuff like that. And just everybody be nice to everybody. Costs nothing.
Jen, final thought?
Sleep is the foundation of health. Prioritize it.
Jerry, you have any final thoughts?
No, just thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank
My
you.
final thought is this: thank you very much for being a guest on my show. You're a really cool guy, and much continued success. And when you have more stuff to promote, be sure to come back. So that about goes for this week. If you miss any part of our show,
Tough.
thank you. Go to www.itcameforyu.com. The archives will be up in a week or so, and we'll see you next time on It Came From the Radio.
Right?
Thank you, guys.
You've been listening to It Came From the Radio with Matt Torres. The views of the show's hosts and guests did not necessarily reflect